All right. Well, I'm going to start this off by explaining what I see as the main major issue. I mean, there's lots of conspiracies going around, and you can go into a lot of details, and I
Mm.
see a lot of confusion. So on the very top level, you've got a stable coin, and in order to cash that stable coin in, you can transfer it to another crypto, and that other crypto then inflates to make up the stable coin, the amount of stable coin that you've sold. So it allows the stable coin to stay stable in theory while they expand and contract the supply of the other crypto. And what's happened is that works in theory based on the idea that the main crypto, i.e. Luna, Terra Luna, is a massive market cap, and their stablecoin is very, 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 very small. So that if there is ever a run on that stablecoin and they try to convert all that stablecoin back to Terra Luna only has to inflate slightly. So maybe the Terra Luna price suffers a little bit, but in reality, it's okay at the end of the day because it's only a little bit of selling that you have to do to convert to support that run on the stablecoin. Well, that's not what happened, and the stablecoin price ended up getting way out of whack to the point where the market cap of the stablecoin, they made so much stablecoin that it was like, I don't know, 20-30% of the Luna when the Luna price was high, and that of course presents an amazing opportunity for short sellers, and well, even regards to there not being short sellers, there doesn't necessarily have to be short sellers to take advantage of this. It could just be a run on the stablecoin that causes the collapse of the main token as it inflates, which is what's happened. And then there's a lot of theories going around about who and what and where and when people shorted the market at the top. Of course, if you do short the market and then you hold some of the stablecoin and you damage the stablecoin link and then gamble on the idea that the core team will sell their insurance funds in BTC to then buy more of their own stablecoin to protect the peg, you can cause a whole market collapse, which is what looks like what's happened.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of my take on it from a very top level, and hopefully that's simplified it for
Yes.
people because I've been reading a lot of
It's
confusion.
tough to know where the listeners are at, right? Because you could be completely
Sure.
uninitiated in this topic, right through to just give me the absolute latest alpha, and it's a struggle to know where to pitch it. You know, I'll just pick up where you left off there, which is it's all very well the what do they call it, the Terra Foundation Guard was the foundation, yeah. Supposedly they're supposed to guard the stablecoin, but by the by, so they had all this BTC. That's all fine, good collateral, because it was the second thing supposedly backing the UST stablecoin in addition to the Luna token. The trouble is that that's still 100% exposure to crypto, and then if the entire crypto market takes a dip, well, I suppose it really matters how much collateral you've got. If the whole market takes a massive 50% haircut, you've got a bit of a problem there. The difference with the non-crypto backed stablecoins like Tether and like USDC is not backed by crypto collateral. It's backed by stuff like US Treasuries. USD Tether is backed by things like commercial debt, corporate bonds, stuff that's outside of crypto, which means that if Bitcoin goes down 50%, Luna goes down 99%, well, those other stable coins have less risk exposure to a crypto market drawdown. That's the unfortunate thing about the UST was the backing was all crypto exposure. So that's a high level view of the major problem that's occurred here.
Sure.
And it's when you start thinking about algo stablecoins, because there's basically two types. You have something that has some kind of real world backing that the government can come after, or it's a completely algo coin where it's backed by 100% crypto. In my mind, if you're going to go that route where you have the native asset and you wanted to add something else and still remain an algo coin, really the only thing I think you could add would be Bitcoin, simply because it's the only decentralized censorship resistant network that can go on. But I agree with you fully. It's kind of it's like, okay, well, how much does that really help? Because when you need a stable coin the most, that's when Bitcoin's usually down and the rest of the crypto market is down. So how much value could it really bring? I still think there could be value. I think in the in the future, you'll have Bitcoin become more of a beast of its own, decouple, become a little bit more stable. It'll never be obviously super stable, but the bigger it gets, the less velocity to swing, more power it takes.
Totally.
So I could see it, maturing into some sort of pristine collateral that algos could reach out to. But the main topic here is Luna's main use case was being a stable coin, and when that use case went down, there's no reason to hold Luna. Whereas if you wanted to do an algo coin right, you actually have to have something of value. Like if I equate this to Hive, I look at Hive as sort of like digital real estate. You're not going to have apps like Splinterlands or 3Speak dumping their Hive because we need it, right? Our apps would not function. So you need sort of hodlers of last resort and an algo stable to keep it from literally going to zero, as you saw with Luna, because if you literally have one use case and that use case goes out the window, there's no reason to hold it at all.
I'm with you. So just back up one sec. So we're starting to dig into the detail here. I want to say one other thing on the highest possible level, which is like the root of this is basically crypto just still doesn't have enough liquidity to do algorithmic stable coins. That is the absolute, what do you call it, tip of the spear. That is the absolute point. Like, what's the point? That is the point. The point is not enough liquidity, right? If you had enough liquidity, just say UST was backed by US government bonds, right? There's so much liquidity in that market. I don't think there's a pair of institutions or group of people on the planet that would have enough cash to do what happened to UST and do a speculative attack on it. It's just so liquid, you just wouldn't bother, right? The risk to reward ratios is too high. But because crypto is still the little tiny sailboat in the ocean, the algorithmic stablecoins can keep the boat, wobbling right and left a little bit. But if it gets too choppy, it capsizes, and that's what happened. So one day, when crypto grows up, maybe we'll be able to do algorithmic stablecoins. Maybe it'll be backed by Bitcoin. Maybe when Bitcoin's a 20 trillion market cap with trillions a day in liquidity, maybe, but not yet, obviously. And here's the proof.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to figure out about the whole Luna situation is because there's rumors that they actually acquired the 1 billion in UST over the counter from the foundation,
Right.
from the pre-mine, essentially. If this is true, then this is an attack. This is attack via pre-mine, not an actual market attack. Because in order to buy, let's say, $1 billion in Luna in a short period of time, that's going to spike the market dramatically and make it much less lucrative to try to do this attack. But if you can just knock on a door and get $1 billion in UST without even having to touch Luna, that makes the attack very easy. So we still haven't actually seen a true attack on an algo coin. It's always been the pre-mine attacks. But you're absolutely right. You need liquidity for these things to work. It's sort of like well, you have two options. You have the centralized route or you have the decentralized route. Right now, to do a decentralized algo coin, it's just very early and there's not enough liquidity and it can be easily attacked if you don't parameter it right. But one day, if you get enough goods and services, if you get enough games, if you get enough apps, if you build a deep enough layer to the algo coin where you can stake it for longer times, earn yield, turn into more like the banking system 2.0, you might have a chance there, but it's definitely a long-term game. We're not there yet for an algo coin to actually be taken seriously.
I wonder if Do Kwon, giving him the benefit of the doubt and assuming it wasn't him that did this, I wonder if Do Kwon remembers when he printed up at $1 billion and gave it across the OTC deal. I wonder if in the back of his mind he's like, shit, that was when it went wrong.
Well,
the thing is, he could have been a part of it. I mean, he doesn't have a very flavored history. I'm not putting any accusations, but I'm saying that's the problem when you have closed door pre-mines, and non-wallets.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on, and you just have to trust that this guy isn't, profiting big time on the sidelines. We have no idea.
Well, here's another tip of the spear then. The problem is human beings are creating these projects, so they all sort of start in the real world, and then that brings up the problem of distribution. That's basically the problem. How do you fairly distribute a token? Because that's the only way to decentralize it, and that's back to Bitcoin, where everyone loves that in terms of being decentralized, is that because it's proof of work and all that is how it was as fairly as possible distributed in the early days, right?
I mean, what do you guys want to go more down the Luna route here, or do you want to talk about solutions? I personally believe that HBD, I'm sure you're aware of HBD, Chris, has a very strong case here. It's not infallible, I don't believe, but it's pretty damn close to it. And a lot of these issues have been thought about prior to the build of HBD and during HBD being around. It's like 6 years old now. It's there's a lot of lessons that are already to be learned from this whole issue that are already built into HBD. And there's probably some other things that we can do that maybe come from this call that we can improve on HBD.
All right. So,
or do you want to go down the kind of the corporate side of what could have happened with USD Luna?
yeah, that's like I don't think that's
USD
particularly valuable to the listeners. That's my opinion. I'd say let's go forward and say, okay, could you articulate why this attack wouldn't have worked on HBD? I have a sort of an answer to that, which is the market cap difference between Hive backed dollar and Hive is just so massively different. The market cap of Hive dwarfs the market cap of HBD. That's my answer to that question, but you can take a swing at it if you want.
You got the haircut rule, 20%, so they'll stop printing. So it's meant to sort of not allow the HBD market cap to get bigger than Hive, which we saw happen with Luna. And obviously they only had a trickle and bucket of Bitcoin compared to the actual market cap of UST. So that really wasn't even, that didn't even help at all, really. That was just like a little fart in the wind compared to the 17 billion trying to exit. The reason, one of the reasons I think, of course, anything can happen in Hive. We saw it happen with Justin Sun. These attacks, people get very creative. But the first thing that stands out is where you're going to get a large amount of HBD. You know, you can't knock on the Hive Foundation door and get a pre-mine.
Okay, there we go. That's a good answer.
Yeah, and then, of course, the haircut rule. So I'd say those two right there are very, very big deterrents.
Explain the haircut rule.
So if the market cap, if Hive dips too low and the market caps of HBD and Hive get too close, it's a 20%. So if it gets to 20% of the market cap of Hive, it stops printing HBD altogether and starts inflating Hive. So what happened with Luna, where Luna's like 3x the market cap, or UST is like 3x the market cap of Luna, couldn't happen on Hive. It would just physically stop printing HBD until the price recovered. So sort of a built-in mechanism there to stop this. Because the problem with UST, it got so big, and then you had 17 billion. That's actual realized, like that's stable. That's 17 billion that wants to exit with 17 billion. And once you allow it to get that high, it's like a tidal wave you can't stop. But if you never allow the tidal wave to get that big, bigger than it should be, with the market cap of Hive being, if it's too low, then you just can't get that big of a wave. So you don't actually have to worry about that much cashing out.
Okay.
So,
it's also why HBD is still sitting there at $1 and has an APR of 20%, because the market cap of HBD is so low that for the time being, as long as the community agrees and everyone votes for it, we can still afford to have a 20% APR on HBD, because the market cap's so low that it can increase for another couple of years at least, and still not really make a mark on the Hive market cap.
Okay, so let me set this up. I'm gonna ask you what's the relationship between Hive dollar and how they're minted and burnt and all that lot. But let me set the Luna one up first, just for the benefit of anyone who's listening. So
sure.
They call UST algorithmically stabilized, but that's sort of a misnomer. There's a human involvement in the stability mechanism. Say I pay you 1 UST, 1 Terra dollar, right? The reason how that's stabilized is the promise is that will always be worth $1 worth of Luna. So if Lunas are trading at $1 on the market, and obviously that varies, you can redeem or swap on chain 1 UST for, in that case, 1 Luna token, because Luna is $1. And then when Luna's 10 cents, you'd get 10 Luna for your 1 UST, and vice versa, right? If you wanted to mint UST, you'd need to burn $1 worth of Luna at the market price, and Bob's your uncle, right? And you could pick whichever side of that you wanted. Now, there was an on-chain cap for how much new Luna could be created and destroyed. And actually, I think yesterday or the day before, that was increased by a factor of 4 or 5 to facilitate people getting out of UST, because there wasn't enough Luna being printed to redeem the value of these USTs, right? I actually lost a bit of money coming out of UST because I had to take a haircut on that. There just wasn't enough Luna. So say you wanted to exit UST, right? You'd take your $1,000 of UST, say, and then you'd burn it on chain. Boom, you'd get the $1,000 worth of Luna, and then you'd transfer that to Binance, sell the Luna for Tether or US dollars, and boom, you've redeemed it in US dollars. But there's a physical action involved there, right? You take the Luna, and then now you're in a variable price asset. And if you want the spendable value, turn it into US dollars, withdraw it to your bank account, spend it. So traders would keep UST stable because of this, right? So say when the UST got down to, it lost its peg and was trading at, say, 90 cents. Well, the trader looks at that and they go, hang on, if the Terra blockchain is going to give me $1 worth of Luna for those tokens, it makes sense for me to buy 100,000 UST at a 10% discount, basically. It's 90 cents a coin. Burn it, get $100,000 worth of Luna, and sell it for dollars and make 10,000. Does that make sense, right? And of course,
Sure.
when you're doing that, you're buying up the supply of UST on the market that's trading at 90 cents. Of course, that's going to bid the price up because of supply and demand. You're creating more demand for UST at 90 cents. So people are going to go, oh, I'll sell mine for 91. Then you eat up all that supply, and it's 92, and it gets back to the peg. And of course, when it gets over $1.01, people sell it and do the opposite, right? But this is how the death spiral happened, because when I say do my arbitrage trade, and I go and buy 100,000 UST for $90,000, and then burn it for $100,000 worth of Luna, right? Now I need to go and sell that Luna to get it back into dollars. Who do I sell it to? There needs to be buy-side demand for the Luna token. If no one's willing to buy that $100,000 worth of Luna for 100,000, the arbitrage trade doesn't work.
That arbitrage trade principle can only work when the stablecoin is above, say, $1.05, $1.06. It can't work when it's below, because there's no one left. It's an ever decreasing spiral. Whereas when it's above, you want to get it back down to the $1. So it works. That principle works. When it's below, the only thing that you can do is just dry up the supply,
right,
and try and not print, right. And that's where the
writing was on the wall yesterday, that Luna was basically going to zero, because people would continue to redeem UST for Luna and then sell it to get the value out, which just meant, well, there was more. There was, like you said, the market cap of UST had dwarfed the underlying market cap of Luna. So the supply of Luna just kept increasing and increasing to honor these redemptions, and now it's trading at a cent, 1 cent, and that's against Tether. So people are it's just unbelievable.
It's brutal. I mean, it's just got to be inflate. Do you know if they've broken the mechanism to keep inflating, or are they just still inflating?
They've halted the chain.
Yeah, that was their answer. They just turn everything off.
That's good. I mean, in many ways, that's good for the crypto market, at least.
That happened 45 minutes ago.
What was funny was they were saying that, we're more prone to attackers now because of that dilution. And I'm thinking that dilution probably made your token distribution more decentralized, because you have like 70%
a cent each, right? And that could have saved it, to be honest. If new capital had kept flowing into buy Luna until all of the UST haters had exited, it would have recovered. But we knew that wasn't going to happen. It was guaranteed almost to go to zero, because the supply of UST was so much greater than the underlying Luna market cap could possibly handle. So someone was going to be last out the door. You know what I mean? It actually says here on Twitter, from the Terra Twitter account, it says, Terra validators have decided to halt the Terra chain to prevent governance attacks following severe Luna inflation and a significantly reduced cost of attack.
Yeah,
that's crazy. So that's is that like code for it's not coming back on, or is it a temporary hold? We don't know, do we?
Yeah, I mean, how do you fix that problem? If you're going to stop it now, you just like, well, we have to stop it just to
Well,
think
you
about
let the
the
centralized
solution.
exchanges trade the price back up. If people are still
Yeah,
trading it, Binance is still trading against Tether.
on the
stop the
exchanges.
bleeding, I guess, and hope there's any
I mean,
speculators left.
if they leave it turned off, they've definitely got a shit ton of lawsuits coming their way, and they've got virtually no defense.
What's the lawsuit?
The moral thing to do would probably be to accept those lawsuits and turn the thing off, but they're not going to do that. From what I've seen from the tweets coming out from the team, that they're determined to save UST at the cost of everything else, by the looks of it. And so I can see them turning it back on. The problem then becomes, well, what type of deals are they cutting right now? Where I assume they're trying to get capital left, right, and centre.
And guess who's got capital?
Come in and own the community.
Who's got capital?
Right,
the people that attacked them in the first place.
And then it's like Kibwana, right?
Well, you can't really do an OTC deal anymore because you're talking about having to sell 50% of the supply for it to be even materialistic at all.
It would have to be below market value as well.
400 million. Yeah, so I mean,
well, that's the point. That's the point that they're probably doing deals where it's like, I'll give you $1 worth of UST, but you only have to give me 50 cents for it right now, and then when it gets back to $1, you can cash it out. That's what I see. I see that
that still won't work. UST is trading at 33 cents right now, and all the investor would be doing, they'd have to take Luna for it to be worth it to the upside. But they know as soon as they put US dollars into the system, it's just going to get drained by people trying to exit. So Luna will go from right now trading at 1 cent. The daily low is a third of a cent. So even if I do a deal now, it would have to be a fraction of that third of a percent to give me a margin in case the price crashes even further, which it's gonna. As soon as more liquidity comes in, people are going to exit. And there's still billions and billions of dollars, I think, of UST yet to exit. So no one's going to do a deal, mate. It's bust.
The other thing that's a little bit annoying is the fact that anyone can do a deal. Like, what the hell is this?
Well,
you're not supposed to be able to do deals. It's supposed to be decentralized.
I know, but that doesn't work with a lack of liquidity, as you've just seen. The ones that work, like say Tether and USDC, are the ones that have a centralized collateral.
Okay, I think we differ a little bit on that, maybe, because I would class them as even worse than UST.
Well, they work for the time being
because they've already they work for as long as they're doing what they're allowed to do.
Sure,
but they already have struck deals, and they already are regulated, and they already are.
Well, don't expect for perfection. We need the Tethers and USDCs,
which is fine,
while we build better systems and get our liquidity up, right?
Sure,
I'm saying.
There's definitely an element of, there's certain applications that it doesn't matter. There's a little bit of centralization required. It's okay.
So we'll use those in the meantime. But when there is that's why UST was so successful.
Sure.
When we've got a really promising algorithmically stabilized, decentralized stablecoin, which is what we thought UST was, everyone went back crazy for it, right? Now, granted, a bit of a sad story, but it won't be the last attempt. No way.
No, especially what's going to happen, in my opinion, is you're going to have an event where regulators really stomp down on these fiat-backed stablecoins, and you're just going to need the KYC, or you're going to be breaking the law, and that's going to push people to say, okay, we have to build. Because people usually don't come up with the solution until the fire is burning their butts. And right now, it's still pretty comfortable to be in USDC or USD Tether and not have to worry about KYC.
Do you mean when you say KYC? Because you have to KYC right now to mint Tether and whatnot. Do you mean they'll have a requirement that?
But I mean, I can still buy it on.
Yeah, you're right. So you're saying like they might require anyone holding it even on chain to KYC their address,
and if it's not, then you'd be breaking.
Right, so you'd have to have your identity,
your account,
and your Ethereum address with it in there, so that at least they would basically have a centralized database of all the Ethereum addresses, the identities of those people, and their Tether balances. Not Tether, but whatever it is, balances. Yeah, that's probably their ideal solution.
Yeah, I haven't touched a centralized exchange in years, and I deal with USDT. I just use DEXs.
Yeah, it's only the redemption and the in and out gateway that has to be KYC'd. Yes, it's the same.
But then I cash out the Bitcoin. Then I cash out the fiat.
Well, I was going to say that
my way. I never cash out from crypto to fiat.
Well, that's the way it works with things like wrapped Bitcoin. Like I can buy wrapped Bitcoin on the DEX, but I can't mint it. You have to go through a financial institution. Then you have to be KYC'd. I've tried it. So if I want to actually submit my actual Bitcoin and end up with wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum, That's a centralized process right now because there has to be a custodian.
Yeah. Well, it is yes and no. I mean, there's tech that we are working on that we already have up and running, where that won't be the case. You have to have effectively the escrow that's holding the BTC account.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be decentralized, and it has to be voted on by a decentralized community.
Right.
And it has to rotate so that if anyone gets voted out of that multi-sig account, the keys change. The account changes. The owners of the multi-sig get the new keys. That tech is out there and operating, and it's on a DPoS voting system. And none of those witness nodes need to be known. It's just that the technology that we have been using up to now, it's centralizable, and so you end up with a situation where you're ultimately going to have KYC scenarios and everything like that. And then if you don't, you end up with you always have OTC for sure. But
until they KYC the wallets, then you can't even do OTC. But right now, I can say I have a $500,000 USDT looking to buy Bitcoin, and then I can set up a deal with somebody privately without having to go through any intermediary. But pretty soon, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think I'd be breaking the law by having an unregistered USDC wallet, for example. It's not going to be the problem with Bitcoin, maybe in certain jurisdictions, but I don't think you'll be able to get away with these fiat-backed for very long. Yeah. They're way too liquid now.
So I did a deep dive into P tokens a while ago. They use that Intel technology. It's the encryption chip on the CPU malarkey, where it's like a little witness node. So you can peg Bitcoin into it, so that it knows the public address that it came from, and even the owner of the computer with that processor in it can't remove the Bitcoin because it's sort of like held in a hardware wallet that only will redeem to the address that deposited it, and that allows the P tokens like BTC to fly around different networks and be guaranteed to be backed 1-for-1 with Bitcoin, because no one can remove it from that hardware wallet because the CPU witnessed it and did a hardware encryption on it. So I quite like that technology.
That's pretty cool.
I can't put that bloody.
Cool. Does that mean it could be put onto like a USB and just traded as cash, basically?
No, I think because basically that CPU is almost like the custodian of that Bitcoin, right? I'm trying to find it. I thought the technology was called TES or something. It's an Intel technology. It's for servers, really. I'll see if I can find it while we talk, and then I'll shout it out on the air.
Yeah, while you're doing that, let's come back to HBD a little bit.
Sure.
There's a couple of other items on HBD that also protect it from this type of attack. So, as you know, the major one, as we discussed already, is the market cap of Hive being much bigger than HBD. But then the other ones are things like, for example, when you transfer HBD to Hive on the internal swap, you have to wait for 3.5 days.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 3.5 day delay,
mm-hmm.
right? So so if you're an attacker trying to do that trade to inflate the supply of Hive, then you have to take the 3.5 days worth of risk on, knowing that the Hive price could rocket up, especially if the community finds out you've done it, which it will, because it'll be on chain, and they'll just try and buy it up to take.
That is it. There's a signal to the community that they have a chance to respond to it. It's not like boom, right? Like it was with Terra.
Correct, because in Terra it's instant. As far as
it was instant. I know everything just went mental because you've got stop losses all over the place, limit orders, bots that get triggered, strategies, and the whole system goes AWOL, right? Whereas there's this notice period, right? I'm going to do this thing, and then everyone can respond to it. The market can adjust before you can do your attack. So that's almost like a prevention mechanism, because it discourages you even doing it in the first place, right?
It's exactly that.
That's
yeah,
cool, man.
And I don't think people know about HBD. And this is one of the issues that one of my concerns currently. I don't think everyone on Hive agrees with me, but one of my concerns currently is Hive's not well enough known, but people know that it's a stable coin. So there's a chance they'll try the same attack. They'll fail, but it'll still hurt the Hive price, right? I'd rather the information be out there first so people know that it's just not going to work. But that's not necessarily going to stop them from trying, right?
Sure.
So yeah, the
Well, they
other
also have
thing
to pump the hell out of Hive price because in order
to
to
get
get
hold of the
HBD, you need to
Hive.
buy Hive. There's not enough HBD right now to actually buy. So your only way into HBD is to buy a bunch of HBD, convert it on a 3.5-day wait, then you have your HBD. But that's going to
Yes.
send the market cap of Hive higher, making it further
Well,
from HBD's market cap. So it's sort
well,
of a
yeah,
hard
but
attack to do because we're so separated that it's going to take a lot of craziness to actually bring HBD market cap anywhere close to Hive.
correct.
Because in order to bring up HBD's market cap, you got to bring up Hive's market cap. So it's
Well,
no
that never
OTC
happened
pre-mine
because
deal.
that never happened because you got the 10% haircut. But
Exactly.
you could suppress the price of Hive much lower to get the market cap of HBD close to the market cap of Hive, but that's freaking expensive to do, and I just think that on the flip side is also hard to get hold of HBD. There are liquidity pools forming on Polygon and BSC now, and that's where I have a little concern that people can more easily now get HBD. I mean, ultimately that's going to happen because people are going to be. There's always going to be an incentive to provide liquidity. So I'm not sure. You know, if an attacker can figure out a way to push the Hive price lower, and then get it to the point where, you know, let's say the market cap of HBD is, say, 50% of the market cap of Hive. Obviously, the haircut will have happened a long time prior to that, but they could still push the price of Hive lower. Go get a few 100,000 HBD off the liquidity pool, and then force convert that to Hive and dump the Hive. You can have a massive expansion of the Hive market cap in that scenario, and that really that still doesn't destroy Hive. It just dilutes our stakes of Hive. So you could end up with a large dilution of your stake of Hive, but it wouldn't destroy the price.
But you also, it's like, you also have to ask motive. It's like, that's going to be very hard to do, and you're not going to make it. It's not like the UST deal where you just got to pre-mine. You're like,
it's
I can open
straightforward.
up a short and get this done in 48 hours. This is like some methodical, long-term,
that's some really
throwing
crazy
salt
shit,
in the engine to make the price lower. So, I mean, unless you're Justin Sun and with the revenge, I don't really see like an actual profit motive there.
Well, I think even on top of that, like as you were touching on before, you have the underlying apps where there's diehard holders that are going to hold anyway because they've got their apps running, and the users that happen to use the chain, and all the, you know, you've got the most active blockchain game in Splinterlands. You've got the various different apps that are forming, and then the utility and the users are going to have to get hold of Hive to get resource credits to transact on chains for certain things for those apps as well. It gets to a point. There's a certain point where it's just like the intrinsic value of Hive never goes below the market cap of HBD, you know, and so
we never really took HBD seriously. It was just some kind of thing. It's like we valued Hive because of the digital real estate, and then it just so happened down the road we started to understand, oh wow, we can actually do something with this Algo stablecoin here. But it wasn't the other way around. It wasn't like, you know, in Luna it was sort of like, oh, you know, you get Luna to buy UST. That's the purpose. If UST fails, then why would you hold Luna? Hive it was the other way around. It was sort of like we discovered the Algo stablecoin, that we just dusted it off. It was like, oh, we have this thing. But Hive's still valuable because, you know, we need to run apps. We need, you know, the fast feeless transfers, the censorship resistance, all this stuff is pretty valuable to a lot of apps. So you need some kind of hodler of last resort. Like Luna obviously had no hodlers of last resort. So
well, hodlers of last resort. We talk about diamond hands and all that, right? Well,
we talking about people that actually have utility for the token. They need the token to run their application, for example.
You mean because of network resources?
The hodlers of last resort. Yeah, correct.
Exactly.
Well, that would be the same.
Not
Probably
like
the same with what's his
like,
face.
like a farmer needing tools.
It wouldn't be the same with Luna though. Luna is the transaction fee. That's a lie. That's a total lie.
Yeah, but there's no one that needs. So if there was like a set of apps running on Luna that needed Luna resources, so they had to have a balance of Luna in order to execute to run their apps, then they are not going to sell.
Okay, they don't need a balance, but they would need to spend Luna. So if your wallet's empty and you don't have a budget for fees, you'd have to buy some.
Correct.
So okay, that's interesting. So well, the chain's halted now, so this is kind of a moot point, but that would be where the demand, the buy side demand for Luna should have come from if the network were being high usage. So you had 100 apps, you know, 1,000 apps, whatever, constantly buying, I don't know, $1,000 worth of Luna per day to use for transaction fees to pay for their users or whatever, right? Just like AWS or whoever's building apps on there. So that would have been the bottom. There would always be, what did I just do? 1,000 apps at $1,000 a day worth of buy side demand, and it would just get cheaper for them to buy that Luna every day, you know. But that obviously ain't there.
Yeah, like Yeah, like Splinterlands was burning millions of Hive almost weekly for a while,
Burning it
just because Hive accounts
Yeah.
Hive accounts cost
or
3
to
Hive.
create
So
accounts. Gotcha.
all these people are creating accounts. So they were buying the Hives and then packaging it in a card package for their
That's good
users.
though.
So yeah, the demand was there. So they're actually buying Hive and burning it. You need something like that to keep the flow. You need some
Well,
kind of
that's good because
natural
they're making an
demand
investment. They're taking a
for it.
risk that their app is good enough that they can do an ROI on that account creation fee, right?
Yep,
So
Right.
there's something that's
exactly.
good, man.
And also it means as well, if they ever, for whatever reason, decide to demobilize their app and run it somewhere else or stop it from running Hive accounts, they can then take their Hive and sell it.
Sure,
It's not like they're spending that Hive and losing it. It's just an investment that they're locking in the chain.
sure. And they can expand or contract their their cloud hosting bill, their blockchain bill, as and when they wish, depending on their growth or contraction.
Correct.
Yep.
Which was the original.
They,
That was like the original EOS vision that never panned out.
well, I think it's from the same source because it's
It's
down
graphene
basically
technology.
both systems. So, yeah. It's just unfortunately the way that the EOS distribution happened. It ended up with block producers being able to be exchanged and things like this, and you end up having centralized forces control the chain, and it wasn't necessarily community owned anymore. At that
Well,
point.
for me,
even Larimer, by the looks of it, ended up moving away because he didn't have much.
Where that broke for me was when the block producers started to give yield for votes. They started to share block rewards.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, it's going to eat itself. It's going to eat itself.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I held my EOS way longer. I lost about $20,000 on my EOS position in the end, but I held it because I was sort of attached to it emotionally. That's the truth right there. I'm not infallible. And I believed it. I believed in it so much, man. And I was like, come on, we can make this work. We can make this work. It's just burning, man. Just burning. Not burning, man. It was burning in front of my face. And I'm like, we can say this. It's bust, man. Eventually, the pain got so bad. I'm like, I think it's bust.
It's it's like this thing where you get these crazy geniuses.
Two genius,
But
I think.
I think in some ways
I think that's
I
the problem.
guess that's what I'm about to say. It's like they get great ideas, they build them out, and then there's a certain point where they cross the line, and they either don't realize they've done it or they do it on purpose because their egos get in the way, and it ends up ruining the projects. I mean, we're obviously focusing a lot in Web3 with what we're building with the Speak Network and 3Speak and the various different apps running on Speak Network now, and you've got. It's been so hard for Dan and I to do the counterintuitive thing and not put any tokens in our pockets, run it per the community's requirements, make sure there's no centralized source out there that can be compromised and centralized and this type of stuff. We're about, I'd say, 25% along that road at the moment in terms of the actual tokenomic distribution and everything like that. But it's hard. I could see why these super clever dudes are just like, nah, just let me handle that shit, right? And there's always a line. There's always a day, like the day Do Kwon gave that over the counter deal must have been the day. He probably didn't even realize it, but he looks back now and he's like, holy shit, that's the day where I lost this,
Yes.
And it just always seems to happen.
You should let the market do its thing
because of the centralization.
Yeah, totally. So here's the question. I'll play devil's advocate. You're like, you guys are trying to make sure that you don't even become the Duke One, right, of Hive or whatever. So I'm like, what, are you guys saints or something? I don't believe it. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would what I see is I don't want a target on my back.
Okay, that's
so
fair.
I think all these people who have like pre-mines, I look at it as a blockchain as like a child you can't control that can cause extreme destruction. So if I created one of these monetary beasts that anybody can get on, Satan or Jesus, doesn't matter who it is, and I can't control it, but yet somebody can come and control me, I don't want to be in that situation.
You don't want to be that guy.
So, it's more of a, I mean, the riches are good. Don't get me wrong. I'm an investor. And I'm also humble enough to know that, all right, even put all that aside. Let's say I just wanted to compete. Highly competitive. There's always, you're competing against VCs and people with slick tongues. I'm not that sort of salesman. I'm saying, hey, maybe if I build it for free and just do it all, like the community will support me and I'll get my little sliver and I'll be okay. Instead of trying to get this whole pie, which I don't think, it's just too competitive out there. I don't think I could make as much. I think in the long run, if I play this the right way, I'll actually make as much or more and be protected.
And that's cool, man, because you answered the question of you're still acting out of self-interest, right? But you see a wider vision of if you were blind to the fact that or greed blinded you to go for the big money and you didn't realize that you were putting yourself at serious risk of being a target, you'd be like, oh, I'm a billionaire, but I'm going to get shot in the head now. Whereas you're like, look, I'll take much less money and make it sustainable and alive.
I like the way I like the way you said that in a Brummie accent. Because I'm from Birmingham.
I said it in a Brummie accent, did I?
Was it? It sounded quite Brummie.
Okay. Well, not intentionally.
Oh well, I just want to add to that as well. For me, we are. I'm honestly not interested in the money. Like, I mean, it's nice, and I think with some of the ways that we're building apps, with releasing tokens to the community and open sourcing the whole tech, with things like Ragnarok game, that's going to be a very interesting new business model for games where you're giving direct community ownership. And I think once you open source that and you allow communities to build on top of that stuff themselves, you, like Dan says, you've got the potential to make more profit over the long run because you got this open source kind of spiral effect. But more so on top of that, with the Speak Network, my whole philosophy ever since we started 3Speak has been, how the hell do we get out of this, right? It's like, if we're not talking about my bank balance or any of this stuff here. We're talking about free speech, community regulated, pure free speech, where the community decides what gets said, and there is no centralized party, no government, nobody that can get in the middle, right? If you want to build that, and you have any centralized aspects where you can be taken out, and then your app gets popular, and people on your app start saying shit they shouldn't be saying, you are going to get taken out. You know, you are going to have a target on your back. And to me, what we have to do, using this, the whole point of this technology, is to, as a founder, get yourself out of the way, because you're doing a disservice and injustice to your community if you're saying, "Oh, we're doing free speech," and then you're standing in the middle with all the servers. You know,
I'm totally with you, man. It appeals to me, to be honest. Makes me think about the Borg from Star Trek. Which, if you want to destroy the Borg, there's no point in just phaser rifling any one of the drones. It makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. And that's Hive is kind of like they put the Borg are like a hive mind. You know, you what are you gonna do? You have to actually wipe out every individual drone, node, ship, everything. Otherwise, it'll self heals.
Well, and well, then it'll just copy it.
Exactly.
Just copy and be like,
if there's one drone left,
so
it'll go off and rebuild the whole thing.
That's the whole point. And we have to, as community leaders here, get to the point where the thing is whack-a-mole as quickly as possible. And ideally before it blows up. This is why I've never had much.
Don't say blows up. You mean get popular. You don't mean blows up Luna. Right? Careful. That sounded really, really bad then. Sounded really bad.
Yeah, but so before it gets really popular, because then we have the chance to correct all these issues and make sure that we're out of the way. And then once it's sort of living its own life, it's like, well, okay, even if you do take me out or any of the people who founded this out, you're gonna look like an idiot, because it's still gonna go on.
It's also a waste of resources.
You have to join it. You can't make examples. You have to join it. That's what we gotta. And that's what this tech gave us the ability to do.
If you attack these communities, they only get stronger. You attack Bitcoin, look at what happens. People rally behind it. You got the cyber hornets. You attack Hive, what happens? People get really angry and they come out of the woodwork. It's something about a centralizing, oppressing force attacking a peaceful group of people that humans just don't like. They don't vibe with that, and they'll rally around the underdog every single time because it's just the natural thing to do.